Hi friends, Ewelina here. Welcome to the Homecomings podcast, an Audible initiative sharing vulnerable conversations with purpose-driven creatives on their life journeys, all with the intention to inspire people listening to discover the meaning of home in their own lives and come deeper back to their truest versions of self. We use home as a metaphor to represent all that beckons comfort, familiarity, and belonging for your unique life journey. Whether that's through the work that you do, the people you surround yourself with, or the things that bring you the most joy in life. Because to live a life with more home means to live a more mindful and beautiful life. And isn't that the greatest intention for us all? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Homecomings podcast. I'm your host, Ewelina Olachowska, brand strategist and designer, and just big purpose-driven creative human. And you're tuning into episode 10 of season 2, the finale today. If you've been here through episode 1 of this season, I just want to start by saying thank you for tuning in and listening. And especially if you've been here since season 1, episode 1, a big thank you to you, the OG listeners and fans. I appreciate you so deeply. This is definitely a passion project of mine. I didn't think it was going to get to this capacity. Again, 20 episodes in, 2 seasons, already big ambitions for season 3 and 4, and who knows what's going to evolve. So I'm just really pumped and excited if you've been tuning in and listening that you've been here for the ride. So for today's episode, I'm excited and again, a little bittersweet because it's the closing, but the guest on the episode today is my dear friend, Leeza Smith. She is someone who came into my life at such an interesting point in my life where I first came to find personal development. I was going through a big rock bottom moment. I had just gotten out of a 6-year relationship and I was finding myself, for lack of a better expression. I didn't know where life was taking me. I didn't know what to do. This was 2019, summer of 2019. And it was the first time in my life where I was faced with questions that I never thought I would consider asking myself. Like, what do I actually do with my life now? Because up until that point, life had been going a very certain way. And this breakup had really opened up this portal for me, again, for lack of a better word, to really look deep inside myself and ask myself, what the heck am I doing with my life? And that propelled me into the world of personal development. I had never, up until that point, looked at or asked myself the questions to come to understand and know who the heck I am. And that may sound really, I don't know, maybe interesting or funny or insert whatever word you want to use for a lot of people, or simple. I think when people hear the question like, who are you? You're like, well, I don't know. How do you answer that, right? Well, I guess until that point, I didn't really look at that question too deeply. And there were a lot of little moments that were unfolding for me in my life that ultimately led me to connecting with myself deeply or on a deeper level, garnering more awareness. And one of those moments was coming across a manifestation workshop called To Be Magnetic. And I will link it in the show notes for anyone curious and listening. But this was my first foray into the world of self-help, basically. And I was living in Boston at the time, and this was pre-COVID world. Little did I know it was just a few months before COVID was going to unfold. But I'm so grateful that I found it at like truly the perfect time, because at that point, like pre-COVID, the world was normal or normal as we knew it. And people were actually meeting up in person instead of getting on Zoom and having conversations. So every month, what was really beautiful with this little manifestation workshop that I discovered, it was virtual, it was like an international thing, we can call it, but big cities had local meetups and air quotes chapters. And so I think I had come across the Boston chapter on Facebook or something, and I decided to go to the first in-person meetup. And I remember this was August and we were in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I think there were like 20 women at this meetup that came, and we sat in a book circle and we were going around and just venting and sharing what was on our hearts. It was the most like personal, vulnerable, but also beautiful and like just expansive, inspiring thing I had ever done up until that point when it came to connecting with other women. And that was where I met Leeza for the first time. I was struck by her vulnerability. I don't remember exactly what she shared, but I remember her getting just very vulnerable and emotional, which is actually really funny because we talk about that in this episode around how there's just an inherent part of her that is always so just open to having these conversations. And this dialogue in particular is no shortage of that vulnerability. And these are always the best conversations. So I hope you enjoy this one, you guys, because both her and I get just very open. And oh, this is just what I love about Leeza so much too, because there's just this realness. And again, maybe the word authenticity is overused in today's day and age, but I'm still a deep believer in it. And you could replace it with whatever: genuineness, integrity, truth. I really love the word truth, or like a truthful essence. But all of that, when I think of those words, is what Leeza is. We touch so much on this topic, and I inherently felt that when I met her that first day in that circle, and a beautiful friendship blossomed from that time, and we've stayed in touch since. And it was just such a joy to finally have her on the podcast, because I knew there was going to be so many different talking points. She has such a deep level of self-awareness because of the work that she has been doing through her own practices and journey of coming to know herself deeper. And she shares so many incredible, tangible takeaways and tips and just insights on her personal journey, how she came to know herself deeper, how personal development has changed her life, how it's led her to connecting with her gifts, and what that looks like in this season of her life, and what her vision for the future is too. So there's so many incredible talking points that I love that unfolded in this dialogue, because I feel like, in at my core too, inspiration is always something that I'm always looking to offer to people. And in every moment, I feel like every question that I asked and every rabbit hole we went down to, Leeza opened up and shared something that left me inspired in so many different ways. And so I truly hope that in whatever capacity, uh, this conversation with Leeza leaves a little bit of inspiration for you too, because there's so much that we dive into here. We touch on what it's like to grow a community, to start a community. Leeza is someone who actually had her own podcast for many years, and it slowly transitioned and evolved into something that now looks like a virtual and also in person community setting, which is so interesting. Again, how we connected in a virtual slash in person community setting. And now she's leading her own, and she has these incredible um, again, community, which she calls circles, that she calls Rant and Release Circles. And they're fantastic. And really, the premise of them is to connect women and bring them together and create a space that allows them to so vulnerably and openly share what is on their hearts, what they're going through, and really fostering and building a truthful, unique community. So I'm going to plug details in the show notes. Definitely give Leeza a follow. Definitely check out her incredible circles. She hosts them monthly. I'm actually going to be tuning into one that she's putting on this week that I'm super pumped about. But yeah, for anyone looking to just find more like-minded women, to seek community, to learn from other people, Leeza is an incredible leader, a guide, a facilitator, and creates such an incredible space as well for you to be able to do that, to maybe find your people, to speak something that's on your heart, to connect, to vent, to rant and release whatever it is that you're going through. So I will share all the details in the show notes. Definitely check those out. And yeah, I think, that all being said, I will pause here and I will leave you to dive deeper into the episode, because there's a lot here. And I feel like ending the season with this show in particular, with this recording with Leeza, it just feels very, it feels very right. When I curate the episodes for the season, because I pre record them in advance, I intuitively kind of tune into the flow, the evolution of like what topics do I want to touch on where. And if you've been listening, there's a lot of things on business, there's personal development, there's, community leading, personal development stuff, all the things. But I felt like this conversation with Leeza was just like a perfect bow for the end of the season. So I'm really pumped to share it with you guys. If you like this episode, definitely reach out, let me know, leave a review, send a DM, send an email. I'm always so open to connecting and meeting more like minded people. And yeah, I think I'll end here, you guys. So without further ado, please tune into this episode with Leeza Smith. Leeza, welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited to chat with you and connect. And we're going to chat all things side hustles, passion projects, personal development, all that. But to kick off, I've been starting every conversation with a little bit of an icebreaker question, which is what is something that's been lighting you up this past month?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I really think and it's been a theme in my life for a while. It's really like authenticity, just getting
Mm,
back to my core of like who I was when I was a child and just tapping into like that true essence of myself, like that magnetic self. And so I've just really been I don't know, doing things that I would as a child. Like I don't know, just really connecting to her. Like
yeah.
that's been like a
Can you
major
give
theme in my life.
Yeah, can you give any examples of that, of like activities or things that you're getting into?
Yeah, so we'll probably talk about it in this conversation, but I've always just been someone who like communication, performing arts, like just having a voice and putting myself out there has always been just like a natural sort of skill and talent of mine. I don't know if I can blame it on being a Leo rising, but I've just always loved to perform and like be heard and be seen. And I think obviously over time that kind of gets chipped away and you just like, you feel like your goals are unrealistic. So I've just been like trying to do voiceover work. I have like a creative project that I'm trying to work on and just really tapping into what little Leeza wanted to do, but kind of got pulled away from over time. So it's
Oh,
exciting.
that's
Yeah.
so good. I'm going to take that as a reminder for myself because right now, as of the recording of this episode, I'm still in Spain doing my digital nomadic adventures and travels, and it's been so lovely. And
Mhm.
I've been reconnecting with that spontaneity and that play
Ooh.
outside of structure and routine. But I never thought to think about it from like a childlike lens. Because I
Mhm.
think back to summer vacations in like middle school and elementary school, and I had so many cousins. I mean, I still have so many cousins growing up and now in
Yeah.
my present day, but together we all lived next to each other, and we would just like take all day to play in our backyard and all that. And there was just like a freedom around it.
Mhm.
So I've been really trying to tap into that freedom for myself. I never thought to think about it from like that childlike perspective though. And it's so good. And there's something so like, I don't know, just innocent and pure about that. Like thinking
Yeah.
back to our initial roots. Cause my God, getting into our routines, like we're adulting so hard. Like
Mhm.
I forget that like those innocent childhood days are so spontaneous and carefree.
Exactly. And I also just think that, sometimes I think in life you can be lost and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like what lights me up? And it's like it's all there from childhood. Like when
Mm,
we were born, like the things we gravitated towards when we were like 6, 7, 8 years old, like that is it. And I think getting back in touch with that, because we get inundated with all these limiting beliefs of like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't, that's not realistic, or like that's never gonna happen. And it's just like you get told that your essence and the things that you're actually interested in aren't, you know, reasonable or valuable ways to spend your time. And it's like, no, like that's what lights me up. Like that's why I'm here. I feel like to play and to be like in that essence. So I don't know, I'm just really getting back to it and I can feel how important it is.
yeah. Yeah, I love this. The word reconnection is so good to describe all this because we were doing that when we were kids, but we just, forgot or strayed down different paths, and now it's just
Yeah.
remembering and reconnecting. Slight tangent on this also is we were chatting right before we pressed record around I was sharing with you like what is what does my purpose kind of look like while I'm here in Spain because I'm removed from my routine. And so I've had to kind of seek that out. But, and again, now I'm thinking about it through this childlike lens. I signed up for a painting class, which I've never formally taken like art classes in my life. I love doing art and expressing myself through like handmade work. But I
Mhm.
remember, because this is like this conversation is bringing me back right now. Art was always my favorite subject in, school. And I always wanted to do art classes, but I
Oh
never
my
got a chance to
God.
like do that because
Yeah.
everyone was playing everyone was playing basketball in school. So I'm like, I need to play basketball because that's what like everyone is doing. So I need to fit in. And I like completely abandoned that part of myself. So I think now I'm like piecing this together in real time. Like me signing up for this art class is me like reclaiming that activity that I'd never had
Absolutely.
a chance to do when I was a kid when I
Absolutely.
actually really wanted to do that. So
Yeah.
so good. So
Oh
good.
my God.
Okay.
That's amazing.
I could, well, we're already down a rabbit hole, which
I
I
know.
love,
We got
but
deep really
to,
quick.
so quick, which I had a feeling because, like, I mean, Lisa,
It's
we got
me and you.
connected
Yeah.
through, yeah, to give the audience a little bit of context, Lisa and I got connected through a manifestation workshop, do we call it? Anyone listening, if you've ever heard of Lacey Phillips' To Be Magnetic, it's essentially a digital workshop that anyone can sign up for. I think right now they're doing, it's monthly membership, and it gives
Mhm.
you access to these beautiful, essentially prompts and exercises to help you get clear on what you want in your life and how to manifest it.
Yes.
So I remember we got connected. This was 2019 because I was just coming out of this like massive breakup. My world was shook. And
I
it's
remember
so
it.
wild. Yeah, it's so wild because I had heard of Lacey Phillips' work. I had been hearing her on podcasts, but there's something to be said about this concept of divine timing. Like you have to maybe hear something a couple times before it lands, or the
Mhm.
opportunity just has to present itself at the right time because I'd heard about her work. I didn't think twice about it, but there was like something after this breakup that left me so vulnerable and exposed. And I'm like, I should check this out. And so I did. And at that point, because this was still pre COVID times when people were meeting up in person,
I know.
there
Yeah.
was an in-person meetup, and that's when I came to the meetup. And it was, I remember those like days were so nice because there were so many women that showed up and were like supportive, and that's where we got connected. So it's
Mhm.
so beautiful that we're still in touch and we're getting a chance to connect now on the podcast. But this is all context to say that I knew we were going to go deep on this conversation because manifestation could be a deeper rabbit hole.
I know. It's like it's funny because it's like our very first interactions were like super deep. So it's just
So
we
deep.
always just naturally kind of go there with each other. I love it.
I know. I know. Like I remember. I know for sure. I probably cried in that.
Yeah, I cried every meetup, so 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, like, here's another rabbit hole that I want to go down to. I want to reverse because I want to do a little like intro to you, but before I lose my thought,
Oh yeah, of course.
just a question that I wanted to actually ask you is this whole concept of like a community in these containers that unfold. Like, for example, when we did our manifestation meetups, there was something so beautiful, and you touched on it. It's like this like vulnerability that is like just natural to the group, and I found that to be so amazing. And I think for anyone listening who has never partaken in, I don't know, just like a group setting or a retreat or any sort of like, hate to use the word container, but like a space like that. It's
Mhm.
something indescribable. Like I truly can't really put it into words, but it's basically a space that, like-minded people come together and maybe you can articulate this in a way because I'm curious on your thoughts. Like, what is it about those settings that allows people to be so vulnerable, like in your experience? Because I know you've done a lot of this stuff and been in different group settings like this also.
Yeah, I think it's honestly the intention. I think when you have a bunch of people coming together who are like-minded, they really are interested in the same thing. Like they are very open to the topic and the subject of actually, connecting with others and talking about a subject that's passionate to them. Like I just think that it just cultivates this really amazing environment where you can just easily connect and just go there because it already just feels safe. You already know, like, baseline, these people understand me when it comes to, whatever topic we're relating on. And I don't know, I just think, even starting a circle of my own, just women's circles and community groups are just so important, honestly.
Yeah, and speaking of your circles and community groups, this could be a good opportunity for the intro that should have happened at the first question. Can you share with us a bit, just like a quick elevator pitch of who you are and what you do, and if you want to speak to your circles, just to give a little intro on that, what are your circles?
Yeah, so I'm in a transitional period right now when it comes to my kind of creativity and what I'm putting out in the world. But what I have been consistent with for, it's going to be 3 years in March, which is crazy, is my Rant and Release Circles. So they were based off of an old podcast I did for 4 years called Leeza Rants Podcast. And I would just go on rants about a lot of different topics and a lot of self-help topics. And so during the pandemic, there was obviously this void when it came to connection and meeting people, and I felt really lonely. I lived alone, and I was like, okay, I'm tired of talking into this microphone by myself. I want to connect with others. So that's really where the Rant and Release Circles sort of came into play. Again, as someone who has been a part of a lot of different other community groups, like the manifestation groups and other groups in Boston, just to make friends. I felt like, okay, I want to have a women's circle where we can really go deep and really open up about what we're going through, because it was such a challenging time during the pandemic. And I was like, how about we take the things that I talk about on my podcast and just discuss them together? Because just having my point of view doesn't always, hit the same. I wanted to hear from other women who are going through similar things, and we can teach each other, learn from each other, inspire each other. And it's honestly just been the most amazing thing I've ever done. We meet once a month, whether it's virtual or in person. I've had a lot of amazing women and experts come in to help teach us about a lot of amazing topics. And it's just been so amazing. And I really feel like I've cultivated this really amazing community, and I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, and I've joined a few of your circles, Lisa, and they're so great. And I've expressed this to you before, but you really do have such a gift when it comes to your voice, and that's a topic that I definitely want to dive into with you on the show of like, how did you find your voice? How did you get connected to that? But before we do, can you take us back to before you started your circles? Like, how did that idea come to you? Because I'm so curious on origin stories and like the evolution of projects like this. Like, can you take us back to that moment of like, I need to do this?
Yeah. So I'll kind of give you a little bit more history because it kind of touches on what I was talking about, your initial question. So I feel like growing up, again, Leo rising, little kid, I did performing arts classes and acting and singing, and people were telling me you should be a comedian. I just loved to perform and have a voice. So when I was in college, I had a professor literally tell me like that she enjoyed reading my papers. She was like, "You should have a blog. You have a great like writing voice." And I was like, "Okay." So I made a blog, leezarants.com, and then I was like, oh, I feel like my personality can't really come through in writing. So then it led to my podcast. So I did that for 4 years. And again, I think during the pandemic, I realized I was really burnt out with that medium of just constantly putting out a episode, by myself, especially. I was a solo host and, every single week. And I was like, I had, this is where it gets woo woo. I had a
I
session
love
with
it.
an
Let's go
energy
there.
healer, intuitive, and she was like, Leeza, I see you, like, she's like, the reason your podcast isn't fulfilling is like you need an audience. Like you need an audience, and you need she's like, I see you like sitting around a campfire and like talking and teaching people. And I was like, a woman circle. Like it just came to me. I was like, yes, I need to do a woman circle. Like I need to have that live like interaction with people. And it was so true. Like the very first circle I had, I felt that spark, and I was like, I felt so lit up and fired up afterwards. Like I called my mom and I was like, this is so amazing. Like I was just like on a high because yeah, like something about that performing aspect or just having people respond to what I'm saying is
Mhm.
just, I could just tell that was like very true to me in my essence. And, the little performer Leeza that's inside, I think um, having circles was just that huge thing that I needed to just feel that spark again. So,
Yeah, it sounds like the nudges were there all along for you, like all your life.
yeah.
I'm curious as you were talking because it's so beautiful that you got that reassurance from people along your
Mhm.
path. How much would you say that those comments or feedback from people supported you? Because I think oftentimes there's something to be said, or there's a lot of things to be said about the confirmation from other people. Because we could be so in our heads, like, no one cares about this or this is stupid. But then sometimes it's just, it takes that other person to recognize, like, oh, you have a gift or this is good, that like keeps you going. So, how much would you say that that kind of propelled you on your path?
Yeah, definitely a lot because, I think before I got into this sort of spiritual work that I do, I had a lot of, low self esteem and just a lot of limiting beliefs about myself, just feeling like, who wants to hear from me, or like I shouldn't, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be on stage, even though that's what I'm supposed to be, like, that's what I'm here to do, in this lifetime, I feel like. And I was just so closed off from that because I just didn't feel like I was good enough or cool enough or special enough to, you know, I don't know, be on TV or be a host or be any of these things. And I really was blocking myself. So to have that sort of encouragement from people around me who saw my gifts and my light inside of me before I even did was just huge, because I probably wouldn't have made those moves to do the blog or do the podcast unless I really had, people pushing me and saying, Leeza, you have a talent, you need to do this. And so, yeah, I'm super grateful for that, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing because I feel like, we intrinsically, like I think you said it at the beginning, like we have everything we need inside of us, like we know what's right for us, but we lose ourselves along the way. So reconnecting, remembering, coming back to that takes work, especially when life gets in the way and we're like adulting so hard. And to
Yeah.
have that reassurance and those reminders from other people, sometimes that's all that we need. So I don't know, this is like just to say for anyone listening, if especially if you're in a rut or like confused or stuck around what to do, if there's any moments that you could think back to like those compliments. I think compliments are such beautiful clues that we overlook.
Mhm.
I know for me personally, it's also been an interesting journey of receiving compliments because people will like share something so like honest and like maybe out of the blue with the way they see you or a compliment, and then I feel like more often than not, our natural inclination is to be like, oh no, like whatever. Or we go to like bashing ourselves instead of
Yeah.
stepping back and be like, oh, thank you. Like I received that. Actually,
Yeah.
I want to hear from you. Like, have you had a journey with receiving when it's come to that? Has it been, I don't know, have you struggled with that at all? Or has it kind of been like, okay, like I get it. Because for me, I know I've had to work through that a lot where now when someone gives me a compliment, I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, thank you. Instead of, no, no, like, oh.
100%. So, you know me, I have to bring it back to astrology, but I'm a Virgo moon. So I am so critical on myself. I'm such a perfectionist. Like, I'm always critiquing myself. How can I be better? How can I do better? And what I actually had to do, which is a really good tip to anyone listening, is I have this folder in my phone called encouragement. And it's like a photo album, and I just screenshot any nice thing that someone said to me, or if they listened to a podcast and they told me how amazing it was, I just have like a whole album of screenshots of just nice things people have said to me about my work. And I think whenever I feel discouraged, I like to go back in there and just read. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, like my podcast was awesome. Like, that wasn't a failure. Or
Mm.
like, just kind of lifting me up to be like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing a good job, and I just need to continue, because I think sometimes you can be hard on yourself, especially if you're doing something creative and you don't see a lot of growth at first. It's a very steady grind. It's important to be able to receive those compliments and just know that you're doing a good job, even though sometimes you might get discouraged or you won't feel like you are. So I think that's an amazing tip. It's really helped me.
No, that is so, so good. Like having an actual tangible reminder that you could
Mhm.
look back to. Because we all go through these motions. Like we have our low days and then we're in our head and you're like, no one cares or blah, blah, blah. But to be brought back to that moment is so powerful. Something that
Mhm.
I have done in the past, and I haven't done in a while, or maybe I don't do enough, is so, and this like randomly will happen when I'm like mid scroll on Instagram and I'll just go on my profile rewatching my highlights from because of course the highlight reels are like the best reels and they're your best moments and your happiest moments. Like rewatching highlight reels because I'm viscerally brought back to like that moment, whether it was on a trip or I'm happy. So that will instantly get me out of it. But I realize as I'm speaking, like it's been a long bit since I've done that. But to have a tangible reminder, like a folder, maybe front on your phone or desktop or whatever, that's
Yeah.
so good. That's such a good tip. I want to go back to your circles and just dive a little deeper into that because you mentioned the early beginnings, the unfoldings of how that came to be. You knew, it sounds like when you started them, you knew that this is like it, like it felt
Mhm.
good. I'm curious when it came to your community actually and like attracting those women, what did that process look like for you? Because I feel like a big fear for people starting any sort of creative venture or their own business is like, where am I going to attract my people? Like, where is that community going to come from? So, can you share a little bit about how you cultivated your women for your circles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it all was on the back of my podcast that I did for 4 years, So I feel like I already sort of cultivated sort of, I don't want to say fan base by any means, but just people who were already familiar with my work. And so they were like, oh, this sounds interesting. Like they knew me, they knew how the topics I was interested in. And I think they were able to kind of trust, okay, whatever Lisa's doing, I kind of want to be a part of, or I think it's cool or interesting, which meant a lot to me. So it was, yeah, just off the back of all of the sort of promotions and, sort of community that I've already built with my podcast, I was able to sort of kind of get those same people to, hey, try this thing with me that's, maybe weird or out of your realm, but trust me, like it's going to be awesome. And so I'm really grateful for everyone who kind of trusted me and was like, okay, I'll do this this circle and see what it's about, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And like talk about it's what sounds like a really beautiful transition
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm always of the belief that, everything happens for its reasons, everything has a purpose. Sometimes in real time, like in the moment, why something served you, but then sometimes it'll take years to recognize, like, oh, that one random job that I had and learned the skill, here I am finally applying it when I never thought I would have to. Like, I remember leaving for me,
Mm.
my background's in architecture. And when I left architecture, I'm like, I'm never going to need this again. But then when I started working in my like graphic design agency, here I am having a project where there's an opportunity to actually design a space. So I was like, wait, I know how to design spaces because I was an architect. And like here I am reusing that skill. But in your instance, it sounds like it wasn't necessarily the skill. Granted, of course, like your skills of like talking, I'm sure lended themselves
Mhm.
so well to you now leading these circles, but it was more so the people that you garnered. So
Mhm.
like all that work, all that time that you probably, I mean, I'm sure you weren't even knowing what was going to unfold after the podcast. You were just doing it, I'm assuming, because it was lighting you up and it was finally this outlet. So how
Yeah.
beautiful to like have started this and then it transitions into something where you don't have to do like the work, air quotes, of like finding your people because that was already kind of done organically for you.
Yeah. But I do want to touch on what you just said because I've actually realized how important that is too because all the work that I've done in the past, those skills do help me as I keep transitioning into different, projects or whatever because for example with blogging, it's like I know how to create a website and I know how to even for promoting my podcast, I know how to do marketing. I know how to reach out to people. So every single thing that you try, you do gain those skills that are helpful for the next thing. So I think that was really important for me because I kind of I was so scared of quitting my podcast. Like I really was, because I had put so much time into it, and I was like, I'm not a quitter. I had this whole kind of
Mm,
image of myself of like, Leeza doesn't quit. Like, you know what I mean? And it was something that I had to chip away at and be like, okay, no, it's okay to like quit. It's okay to stop doing things and transition to something else that feels more aligned. And so I felt like all the effort and work that I put into my podcast, I felt like it was all for nothing. And then I realized with my circle, it's like, no, I gained so many valuable skills
yeah,
from doing my podcast for so long, and, knowing how to facilitate conversations and planning and even just marketing, like making my little graphics. And, there was just so much that I had learned. And I don't think that anything that you put time and effort into, like the effort is never wasted. You always come away with like so much that you've learned, and I think it's useful no matter what you end up doing.
totally. I'm so with you there. I imagine something that also grew a lot and you got deeper connected to is your voice and how you're able to speak and lead. So I want to know more about that journey for you because you were talking about as a kid always, performing and loving that. So I guess like a question would be like, what are some of those things, voice specific related, if we could pinpoint it, that came out of your podcast and also have been coming out of your circles?
Yeah, so it's funny. So my 9 to 5 job, I work in marketing, and so um having all this podcast equipment still, opportunity randomly came up where they were like, we need someone to do a voiceover for this, commercial that we're doing for my company. And I was like, oh, I can do that. Like, I have a microphone and all this stuff. I know how to record and edit audio. And they were like, okay, like just give it a shot. They were like desperate, and I did it, and they were like, oh my god, this is like the best. Like they were like, oh my god, this is amazing. And now I do all the ads at my company, literally.
Wow.
Like they love my voiceover work, they love my voice, and I've made like literally probably 20 commercials at this point. And so now I'm like, okay, I want to try to do more voice actor work. And yeah, I just love speaking. I love moderating. I love interviewing people. I love just going on tangents, which is Leeza Rants, where that was kind of born out of. Anything where I can just use my voice and talk to people and spread messages, whether it's just through entertainment or if it's actually, speaking my truth. It's just something that comes really natural to me. It's like the natural performer in me, but also just any type of communication has just always been my thing. I remember when I was in fourth grade, I wanted to be, and this is gonna sound really sad when I say all this, but when I was in fourth grade, I wanted to be an author. And because I don't know, we were writing a lot when I was in a lot of papers. They would make us write papers. I don't know, fourth grade. It sounds weird, but anyway. And I just remember hearing from an adult like, uh, authors don't make a lot of money. um,
Mm,
Being a writer's hard. There's a lot of people who can write. And I was like, okay, well, not doing that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I remember when I was looking to go to college, I was like, okay, what am I going to major in? What am I going to major in? And I had gone to New York with my mom, and we went to like NBC studios or something like that. And they had this thing like you could go on a tour and then you could read off a teleprompter. And I was like, da 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 da. And everyone in the crowd was like, she's amazing. Oh my God, hire her. She's so good, right? But I was like, I can't I can't pursue this. There's so many people who do. Like I wanted to go to college for communications, but I was like, what are the odds of me ever being on TV? And then I had so many self-worth issues because I have eczema, and I was like, oh, I'm not pretty enough to be on TV. I could never be on TV. And so there's just so many things over my life. Oh, I like get emotional talking about it. But there's like so many things in my life where I had these signs of like what I'm supposed to do and what lights me up, but I just didn't feel like it was realistic. I didn't feel like it was like that I was good enough or that I was supposed to be pursuing those things. I thought that it would be a waste of time. I thought it wasn't the smart move. And so, I ended up in marketing, and, I'm doing well in life, but it's like I still, especially in recent years, and I think even just now turning 29, I've realized I'm like, oh my God, I've not that I've wasted time, but I've spent so much time out of
Mhm.
my essence, and it's like I finally have the confidence to pursue those things that are just natural to me, like what I'm really supposed to be doing. And so I'm really excited for this next journey of life. And I'm proud of myself that I still, did these things like the podcast and the blog, but I realized those were ways of me tapping into my creativity, but I was still not being seen. I was like hiding behind a screen or a mic. And now I really I'm like, I want to take it to the next level. I want to be seen. I want to be on camera. I want to be in front of an audience the way that I know that I'm supposed to be. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
that was a really
Oh my God,
long tangent, but
if we were in person, Leeza,
crying a
I just
little bit.
want to give you
But
like
yeah.
the biggest hug right now because that was so good and so powerful. And as you were talking, because I literally have had the same thoughts of like it wasn't up until honestly up until TBM, just 2019, so 4 years ago, that I
Yeah.
feel like I finally like I opened my eyes to my potential. Because prior to that, I feel like I was living in a vacuum of, oh my God, I'm doing this because I'm supposed to, or, this would make my parents happy or whatever. And that year for me and getting out of that relationship, that was the first time that I feel like I chose me. Like I made a decision that disappointed everyone,
Mm.
but it made me happy for the first time. And that was so hard. That was definitely my my biggest rock bottom. But from
Yeah.
there, I'm like, whoa, like the world is like, not to use a cheesy expression, but like the world's my freaking oyster. Like there's so many things I could do. And what actually has recently given me a lot of reassurance when it comes to those thoughts, because I think the same things like, what the hell was I doing for 28 years? Like there were so many opportunities, like that art class I could have taken when I was a kid, but I said no because everyone was playing basketball.
Yes.
There is a woman, there's actually, so the remote year opportunity that I'm doing here in Spain,
Mhm.
it's so interesting. It brings such a unique group of people because I found it's people from very similar walks of life. Granted, they're in different stages and come from like completely different, like, I don't know, moments. But everyone's kind of on this journey of maybe refining themselves, for lack of a better expression. Like everyone here is either post big breakup or post a job loss and like literally eating, praying, loving. But this month in particular, there's four women who are like in their 40s or 50s post divorce and are like traveling for the first time. And I had this really beautiful conversation with this one woman on the group who was telling me, she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, you young people today, she's like, I can't believe how like self-aware you guys are and just like how
Mm.
you're getting after life. And she's just, I don't know, she's like late 40s, early 50s, so 10, 15 years older than us. But
Yeah.
she's expressing to us that we're so much more advanced. And here she is, like, for the first time, like, connecting with herself. And I realized, I'm like, wow, in that moment, it gave me a little bit of deeper appreciation because I'm realizing, I'm like, wow, there's people older that are just kind of in that journey. But then I
Yeah.
also thought back and what I shared to her, I'm like, Nicole, I'm like, I think about, like, for example, like a lot of people in my life, like my parents and, that generation and older, like people who never get to do that stuff, like pursue what lights them up or like connect to themselves in like a very authentic, real way. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is really hard. So I know it's like, okay, here we are 28 years in or 29 years in, but I mean, shoot, I'll take this over like the last 5 years of my life or like never in my life. Like, oh, it just helps. It was such a moment of like deeper appreciation. I'm like, okay, we're doing it. And like from here on in, like again, world's our oyster.
Yeah. Oh my God. That actually really just changed my whole perspective. So thank you for sharing that, because that is so true. Like our parents' generations, they are just, you know, they just weren't even taught to connect with themselves that way. They were just really in survival mode. So the fact that we even kind of have the privilege to reflect and really be in touch with our like truest, highest selves is it is like an amazing opportunity, especially, being this young. We still have our whole lives ahead of us still. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for what the future brings now that I feel just more in alignment with who I'm supposed to be. So it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like my secret hope deep down is because, of course, they say, it starts with you. Like you work on yourself and then you see people around you change. Relationships
Yeah.
evolve as you evolve and all that stuff. And I know there's no control, of course, that we have, but like there is that little tiny seed of hope that I have that, like, by me just doing this work, being on this journey, like my parents will follow, that I can support them in
Mhm.
maybe getting to
Yeah.
that place. Yeah, I don't know. I know. And it's like the codependent part of me is like, oh, I need to help them do this. But it's like, no, no, no. Everyone's walking their own journey. I'm going to do me. But it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
actually beautiful when I think about, I've noticed a big shift in my relationship with a lot of people in my life as I've obviously like come to better my relationship with myself. Because
Mhm.
again, for the first like 27, 28 years, I didn't have that. So it's been
Yeah.
really beautiful. Actually, maybe that's a question I can ask you, and if that's relatable in any way, how the personal development stuff, how you've seen a shift in both your personal life and your personal relationships, and I imagine too, because there's always an overlap, but your circles in the last couple of years, they're getting bigger, they're getting better, and I know, or I can imagine, like the deeper that we are connected to ourselves, the more ripple effects that has in all different areas of our lives. So can you speak to that? Like what's that looked like for you, relationship wise, career wise?
Oh my god, it's the biggest thing for me. It's everything. I mean, that that's what I was touching on about like the authenticity in the beginning of our conversation is like the more that I'm in touch with my true essence is like I'm attracting the right people for me because I'm no longer pretending to be someone else or a different version of myself. I was attracting people who weren't, I don't want to say on my wavelength, but just weren't the right connections because I was so out of alignment. So I was like attracting people who were on that same alignment, but it wasn't my alignment. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, kind of going back to everything I was saying, it was like, I feel like we're born with a person we are, and then it gets chipped at the older we get. And it was like for the past probably 5 years when I had like that spiritual awakening, I guess, I've been slowly getting back to that. And a lot of relationships have had to fall away or change, but I've attracted so many amazing new ones and people who really know me and love me for who I am authentically, like the
Mm.
real Leeza. And it's like so amazing. And I think because we were talking before this call, I just turned 29, Scorpio season, and this was probably one of the best birthdays I've had because I had a little birthday party for myself and I was just surrounded by people where I was like, oh, these people really know me. Like these aren't like just surface level connections. Like this is like the real deal. And something I've been praying for so long. And it just feels amazing. The more that I'm in touch with myself and being honest about myself and who I am and accepting my shadows, it's like the right people, they see me for who I am and they're drawn to me and they like me. And it's like I don't have to pretend to be anyone. And it's been hard, I'm not going to lie, but
Mhm.
it's been the most like rewarding thing ever. Just learning how to be myself and authentic in my connections and really learning how to be in relationship, platonic, romantic, but just as the person I really am. So it's huge.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. And like, I relate to everything you're saying too, because I've also witnessed so much change happen, especially around relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's been, I feel like self development is like such a journey. And I think I've seen so many different memes about this where like you start doing the work and then you like your ego inflates. You're like, oh, I'm better than this person and blah, blah, blah. But then you get
Yeah.
like slapped in the face and you're like, hold on, like these people have something to teach me. And it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly getting checked. And
Oh yeah.
in the process, it's been so interesting to navigate how my relationships have evolved, and also to what you shared, like really connecting to my true like people and recognizing like, I feel like in high school growing up, it was always about quantity. Like, how many friends can you have? Like,
Yeah.
all these things. But now it's like, oh, I just savor like the true quality people in my life and the
Mhm.
people that are coming, like the people that I'm attracting now. It's so crazy, like how there's this like instantaneous alignment where even the people like here in Spain where I'm connecting with complete
Yeah.
strangers who we have
Yeah.
so much in common. And I'm like, where did you come from? Like, I feel like I knew you years ago. And yeah, I don't know. It gets me excited because I think this is also like a big stigma. Like, people talk about how it's so hard making friends as an adult. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know because I think I've been shown the last few years that some of my closest friendships have actually come recently and like very aligned, like quick.
Yes.
And it just leaves me excited for, well, who else am I going to meet like next year or 5 years out? I kind of like, for people listening, like I am debunking the myth that it's
Mhm.
hard to make adult friendships. But I guess when it comes to that, now I'm thinking out loud, like, and maybe a question I can ask is like, for people who are in that mindset of like, how do I meet new friends? Like, how do I connect with that? How do we do that? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. I mean, you can join circles like mine, Rant and Release Circles. But also, I think it comes really down to energy. And again, I keep using this word, but authenticity, right? Because, you know, how I went through a lot of different transitions in my relationships as I was healing and as I was becoming my authentic self. And it was a difficult journey. And I remember feeling so lonely. And that's where the circles kind of came out of. I was like grasping at straws and like trying to make friends and just like random people. I'd be like, oh, she seems cool. Like, want to hang out? And it wouldn't go anywhere. It just wasn't working. And I was like, why is it so hard to make friends? Like, that was the space I was in. I felt like it was really hard. But the more that I was like, okay, I'm going to take this time to like be alone and figure out who I am, what I like to do. I realized I'm like, I don't want to drink alcohol anymore. I don't want to, I was just really becoming my authentic self. I was taking away the cool girl aesthetic and like facade that I had on. I'm an emotional person. I cry all the time. I cried in this podcast and I was hiding that. I had friends who had like never seen me cry. It's like, that's not me. That's not Leeza. Like, they didn't really know me. And so the more that I was showing up as myself, I was able to be seen. And it was like friends started just coming out of the woodworks. I didn't even have to try. I didn't have to make effort. It was like I was like this mosquito light and people were just being attracted to me because I was
Yes.
just being myself. Like, my Leeza light was turned on. It was really me. And people could see me, actually me. And like, that's what attracted all these amazing friends I have now. I didn't even have to really put in any effort into it because I was just being myself, my true self.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. Such a good way to like summarize that too. It's that connection back to who you are inherently, which again, it sounds so
I don't know
simple.
why I compared it to a mosquito light, but yeah,
I kind of love
we
that
already.
though. I got the visual. It was so clear.
That's
So
all that
good.
matters.
So good, Lisa. No, but I totally get it. Like the word magnetic. Like, I mean, whether it's a mosquito net or like a light or like magnets, like people are coming to you. But it's
Yeah.
when you embrace like who you are. But it's so much easier said than done. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I know if I heard this when I was like 26, I would have been like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But it took
Yeah.
the first step for me, and for me, that was like joining the To Be Magnetic work. This is the circles, because that's where for the first time in my life I was able to connect with other people who already kind of had their eyes open to this stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, okay. And then I felt like the outsider, where I'm like, everyone else knows about this kind of stuff or has
Mhm.
this mindset, and I'm just venturing
Yeah.
in. Like, I'll never forget when I sat in that circle the first time and I'm like sharing my story. And I think it was because Easy was leading the circles at that time. And she's like,
Yes.
how old are you? I'm like, I just turned like 27 or 28. She's like, oh, like you're starting your Saturn return. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like,
Yeah. I'm like, when does
what
that
is
return? Yeah.
yeah? And that was when
You're,
my
you're like, oh, what's your moon sign? You're like, I don't know. Let me check.
I
you know?
know. I was so like, what is this? Like, you guys were speaking another language. And I know when, like, because I think self-help has come such a long way, like in the 4 years. And now I feel like everyone's talking about astrology and all this stuff. But back then, it
Yeah.
was so new and novel. And maybe it's become, I mean, there's so many memes out there now, kind of like, oh, of
Mhm.
course, like the rising sign and like whatever. But I mean, for me also, like at the end of the day, I think that stuff does have merit. Yes, we could take it a little too far. Like I had to take a break from like diving into that because I recognize for myself, I'm such a passionate person. Maybe we call it an addictive personality. I just like to say I live life so passionately. Like if I'm doing something, I'm going all in, whether that's a creative project, whether I'm doing work, whether I'm working out, whether I'm curating a meal, like I go all in. So I definitely went all in with self development. And I had to like really wrangle myself back a bit. I'm like, hold on. I'm actually curious, have you experienced any of that in your journey? Because I think it's easy to sometimes go too far down the rabbit hole. I mean, when it comes to anything, but particularly like the self help work.
Yeah, 100%. Even with the to be magnetic work now, I feel like I sort of tip my toes in and then I get out. I think it's important to kind of just live life and just sort of have lessons that way instead of always trying to like dig into your trauma and like relive all that. I think, sometimes it can just get a little too heavy and you can just constantly be in this mind space of like trying to better yourself. But I think a lot of the work is really just in experiences and just like living. And
Mhm.
um you don't have to just like, I feel like I was recently in this phase where I was like really addicted to like tarot readings on YouTube. I'm just like, all right, I need to just like cut myself off from that. It's like a lot of these things, it's like we're just trying to find all these answers outside of ourselves. And I think the biggest things I've learned is that we already know. I think the work really is just getting back to our true essence. And like that's where the magnetism comes in. That's where just working on like that self-love, like your self-concept and just really like owning who you are. That's probably the most magnetic thing you can do, and that's the most healing thing you can do. And just when you just continue to live life, those lessons will just kind of come naturally. You don't always have to like hammer away and do all these crazy meditations. I think naturally you're just going to evolve. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
it's
I was
hard
actually,
though.
yeah, and I was actually, as you're talking, I was thinking about a conversation I had with my one of my friends here. We were talking about like relationships and dating and all that, and she's in a phase where she's been single and she's been looking to attract a partner.
Mhm.
And there's this very valid, I definitely would say, like just like notion of like working on yourself, making sure you're good before you attract that person or you're ready to. But I
Mhm.
feel like that with that, there's also a point in time where like there's only so much you could do because it isn't up until you actually are in relationship with another person that then the work really starts. And I've seen this for myself. Like my last
Yeah.
relationship, I was like, all right, I worked so hard on myself after like my very long term last relationship. But then when I
Mhm.
got into this one, I'm like, oh shit. Like, this is where I'm
Mhm.
actually being forced to look at all my stuff in a way I could have done on my own. And I think to what you said about like the lessons are in the experiences, just allowing yourself, like opening yourself up to whatever it is, like whether it's like having those conversations with the people or entering that relationship or I don't know, trying something new, like that's a lot of times where you're going to garner all that stuff. Of course, like you'll get the answer from reading a book or doing a workshop or all that, but don't overestimate or like
It doesn't hit the same.
I know that too. Don't neglect like the simple stuff or the I don't know, the stuff that you take for granted.
Yeah, that's so true, especially when it comes to dating and relationships. I've been on this really long journey of trying to attract a partner, and I'm always like, "Oh, I'm ready. Like I learned everything." And then it's like I have one crazy dating experience and I'm like, "Whoa, it like really triggers
Mhm.
me and rocks me to my core." And I'm like, "Okay, like I had that was something big I had to learn." So
Yes.
I'm finally just like trusting the process of just like, like divine timing like really is a thing, and you might think you're ready, but yeah, when the more you just keep putting yourself out there, you learn and see like, okay, this is like a huge thing that you might think you're ready or you think you've healed, but yeah, you just have to keep learning and experiencing things, and then one
Mhm.
day it'll click. But yeah, there's no real way to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta go in. You gotta go all in. Um, I wanted to go back a little bit with this whole. We touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious around this idea and this whole concept of creativity. And I wanted to actually ask you a couple questions around that because I'm a huge creative. I'm multi passionate. My creativity expressed is expressed in so many different ways, and through your circles, through your podcast that you had started, there's such beautiful big outlets for you to express your creativity. And what I'm especially curious about is how you garner creative inspiration when it comes to maybe some of the topics you have month to month with your circles, or just in general, like what keeps you creatively inspired.
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially like topics and things that I talk about, has always come from, and I think it's actually like a human design thing that someone told me I had, but I can't remember. But it's basically, I feel like all of my inspiration really comes from things that I've been through. And so, I think that's why a lot of my topics are always really about like growth and confidence and just things like that, because I've been through it, and it's like once I get to the other side and once I learn those lessons, I feel like it's my purpose to like share those with other
Ooh.
people, you know? So I feel like that's where like the inspiration comes from, of just once I learn the lesson, I need to share it like with the world. And yeah, that's where just all my inspiration comes from. It just makes me want to, create art from my pain, I guess you could
Wait,
say. And
no,
just,
Lisa, this is so good. This has been something that I've actually been sitting with. I'm like, my goal for 2024 is I really want to birth some sort of like a creative course or something for
mm,
creatives and different people to connect more with their, I mean, truly with what you said, like your inherent self.
yeah,
Because there's this thing, I mean, this is in our culture, in our world today, right? Like everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, everyone wants to go viral, everyone wants to like be seen. And there's so much of this like copy culture of, you even see it on like the reels. It's like, use this template, just plug your videos, go. And I think we're always looking to other people for inspiration. And just like, or Pinterest or all these other mediums. So I love that you shared that you're just coming back to you and you're
mhm,
leveraging what you've been through, because that is so it. Like, I feel like the more that we can connect to who we inherently are, whether it's what we've been through or just like the different parts and pieces of us. Like, I went through a rebrand earlier this year and I had this light bulb moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I've been neglecting the side of me that, I was an architect when I went to school, but I abandoned that because I'm like, well, I'm not doing architecture anymore. But I'm like, wait,
yeah,
still such a part of me. And then there's the part of me that's an immigrant from Poland. I'm like, wait, I have this unique story and cultural background and all that. So my rebrand was this process for me to reconnect and like pull all those parts together. And it,
mhm,
like, I think it planted the seed for me to birth some sort of like a course or program to help other people do that. So
yeah.
I don't know, something big may come in 2024. You
Oh my
speaking of
god.
that, you speaking of that, just like, oh, like little lit a little fire under me. Cause I'm like, this is so true. This is so good. Like turning to yourself for that inspiration instead of looking outside of yourself. Like it's so good.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, a lot of people are scared to do, creative ventures because, like, I know for myself, I'm like, oh, everyone has a YouTube channel or like everyone has a podcast or whatever. But it's like, no, like, you are you. You have your own unique perspective. Like, no one else can talk about a subject, like me, like being a black girl in Boston with eczema. And like, I have my own unique lens of things. You know what I mean? And that's why, like, the representation is so important. Like that might a similar message that might come out of someone else's mouth is going to be different coming out of my mouth, to like the right audience, people who will see themselves in me. You know what I mean? So we all have like those unique parts about ourselves that are different and are valuable, and it's not the same thing. It's like people want to say like, oh, the influencer space is so like, what's the word,
Mm.
oversaturated.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's like, no, like everyone is different. Everyone has their own unique like spin they can put on things. And so, yeah, I just I wouldn't want that to be a reason that holds people back from like using their creativity.
I'm so glad you're saying this. I feel like that is such a that's maybe we use the word excuse, but that's like a reason that I hear people say time and time again. It's
Mhm.
like, well, everyone's doing it, or it's oversaturated. It's like, well, no one's doing it like you, or no one's doing it the way that you could. And yeah,
Exactly.
maybe they're doing it this way, but like, maybe you'll reach a different audience or whatever that is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so good, so good. Oh man,
Yeah.
I feel like we touched on so many good points, Lisa. I can chat with you for hours on end and go down more rabbit holes. But I want to close out with my three closing questions, which we could also go down rabbit holes with these if you'd like.
Okay.
But the
100%.
first that I love to ask my guests is, what is a piece of advice or any words of wisdom that you would share with someone who has a side hustle or a passion project or something that they want to start? But I mean, we kind of just talked about it. Like they have those fears or doubts or excuses or reasons that could be getting in their way.
I would say that it's really important to do something you enjoy doing. Like first and foremost, it has to light you up because that is where you should really get your energy and drive from. You don't really want to rely on like the outside opinions or, there's a lot of people who just put limiting beliefs in your ear. You don't want to listen to even like the affirmation. Like you just want to do something just because you genuinely love to do it. Like do it because you would do it for free. You would do it with no one watching you. First and foremost, I think that's the most important thing that helps you really stay consistent and keep going. But also, I would just say that again, like, why not you? And like, that's this huge question I've always told myself, like, Leeza, you can do that. Why don't you try to do that? You can do it, especially if you know that you have a skill set or you're passionate about something. There's no reason why you can't be the one who's at the forefront. There's no reason that you can't start your own business or you can't create your own podcast or YouTube channel or whatever the case may be, or your own circle. There's no reason why you aren't good enough. So I would just try to have that confidence in yourself to just like persevere, keep going, and just do it because you genuinely love it. And I promise that, with that sort of energy and mindset around it, you're gonna be successful no matter what. So
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so, so good. Okay, my next question is, what does purpose mean to you? And do you feel like you're currently living your purpose?
ooh my god, this is deep.
I
What's
know.
purpose? Hmm. Purpose means to me using the skills and talents you were born with and just sharing them with the world.
Mhm.
Um, that's, yeah, I feel like, again, I keep saying this, but whatever you were drawn to as a child, that is really your true essence. And I think part of what you're supposed to be on this earth to do or to share or just be, to fully own in your being. So I think that's really your purpose. And I think that I'm I feel like I've always lived on my purpose, but I'm trying to take it to the next level. Like I'm really trying to fully embody my purpose and just fully be seen. And it's gonna be scary and a weird journey, but 2024 is like I'm fully dedicating myself to that, just like fully
Mhm.
living my purpose. So, and I'm excited to see what happens.
And I second that. So good. Okay, my last question is my favorite question. My brand is all about the home. It's called Studio Domka, which means home in Polish, and it's just become such a beautiful metaphor for me in my life. And of course, it's subjective. Home can mean anything to anyone, but I'd love to know, what is your favorite memory of home, or when you think of that word, what comes to mind?
Oh, hmm. It's definitely home is really like honestly like my mom. She's just like like the special connection that we have is just I'm just so blessed to have it. And she's just my person in this life. Like I just love her so much. And that's the true place where I feel the safest, the calmest, the happiest is just with her and traveling. And yeah, it's always just been me and her, but that is home for me. She makes any place a home. So I love
Oh,
her.
so good. So
Yeah,
good. Thank you, Leeza. Thank you so much. Thank you
thank
for showing
you.
up so vulnerably and using your amazing voice to just chat all these deep life things that I love to go into. And you've truly just been the perfect person to unpack all these things with. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
And thank you so much for having me. And I love your podcast. Like, you're killing it. And you've been such an inspiration in my life. And just, I just love our talks and how you kind of push me to keep doing more. And just seeing everything you're doing is just amazing as well. So you have a special place in my
Mm.
heart. So
Oh, thank you, Leeza. I received that. Thank you. Can you can you just share with people where they could find you and where they could join your amazing circles?
yeah, so you can follow me at Leeza Rants on Instagram, and that's where I'll post about all of my monthly circles. And link in the bio is kind of where you can find all the information. And yeah, and you'll see kind of new projects coming next year. So everything will be on that Instagram page.
Yay, amazing. Thank you so much again, Lisa. This was such a joy.
Thank you.
Hi again, it's me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, you were able to garner some takeaways and nuggets for your personal home journey. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world if you left a rating and review. And if you'd like to connect deeper, find me at Studio Dumpka on Instagram, where I share content on all things home, of course. Sending a big, cozy, homey hug your way, friends. Till next time.